Hello, in this video we will be dividing decimals. So let's get right to it. The quotient is one of the vocabulary words that you should know by now. But if you don't know, here's the word and here's the definition. The quotient is the answer to a division problem. Okay, so if we have a 6 divided by 2 and we get 3, the 3 is my quotient. Okay, now two other words that you will know that you do need to know how or where they're at, where they're located, and what they're called is dividend. That's the first number in the division problem, and then the divisor. And the divisor is the one that's doing the dividing. Okay, so this says 6 divided by 2. So if you have $6, you can divide it among 2 friends, and the answer is each one will get 3 friends. Okay, so the dividend, the $6, is the number that you start with, and then the divisor is the number of people, and then finally how much each person gets is the quotient. Okay, now remember, if you're gonna write it, if they give it to you like this, 6 divided by 2 equals 3, where they write it sideways, side by side, horizontally, then you can always turn it into a division problem like you're used to seeing. And this is where each one of those portions go. The dividend, the first number, is the one that always goes inside. The first number always goes inside the division bracket. Okay, then the divisor is the one that you divide by, so the second number, that's going to be on the outside. And finally, the quotient is the one that's the answer. So the quotient you will find on top of the division bracket. Make sure you know where these numbers come from, because this is very important to know whenever you're dividing whole numbers and decimals. Okay, so here we go. These are the steps for dividing by a whole number. If you have a decimal that's being divided by a whole number, all you have to do is bring the decimal straight up, then you divide as if they were whole numbers. You forget about the decimal. Then the division will end whenever the remainder is 0, or when you get a repeating pattern. Okay, and will you verify the answer using multiplication? So we're going to do that right now. Let me get this out of the way. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to open up. Let's see. Okay, here's the first example. Is 10.8 divided by 12, or 10 and 8/10 divided by 12. Remember, the first number is the dividend. That's the number that goes inside the division bracket. So I'm going to write it just like that in my grid paper so I know exactly where each number goes. Here's my division. Okay, and then the 12, the divisor, that's the number that goes on the outside. Okay, so now we're going to say how many times will 12 go into each one of these numbers. And as we're working through these, we'll go ahead and put a number on top of each number. That way we know exactly what number we're on. Okay, so let's begin with the 1. How many times will 12 go into 1? 0, right? Okay, so let's put a 0 on top of the 1, and then we can move on to the next number. That's a 0. So the 1 with the 0 combined, that makes 10. So 12, can 12 go into 10? I hope you said no, because then you would be right. It cannot go. 12 is bigger than 10. So I'm going to put another 0 up here. Now remember what happened with this decimal? We're supposed to bring it straight up. So you don't even have to draw this little arrow I'm drawing right now. But make sure that you do write that decimal there. Okay, and now you have 108. How many times will 12 go into 108? And the answer is, I don't know. Well, I do know that 12 times 10 is 120. So it's probably going to be less than 10. It's going to be at 9 or maybe even 8. And I don't know which one it is. But I do know that 2 times 9 is 18, and that ends in an 8 like this one. So that's the first thing I'm going to try. I'm going to come over here to the side. I'm going to say 12 times 9. See what that gives me. 9 times 2 is 18, like I said. Bring up the 1, carry the 1. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 1 gives me 10. So 9 times 12 is exactly 108, and that's what I want, because that's what I have right here. So 12 goes into 108 exactly 9 times. That's 108. And when I subtract, I get a remainder of 8 minus 8 is 0, 0 minus 0 is 0, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So I get a remainder of 0. So this 0.9 or 9/10 is my answer. And remember, the answer to a division is my quotient. And that's it, I'm done. So I did example number 1. And now you get to do example number 2, which is right over here. Make sure you put the first number, the 5.5, inside of the division bracket. The 25 goes on the outside, and then start dividing number by number. Here's your example, okay? Make sure you use the graph paper to keep your numbers aligned. Alright, now then, let's go to the next examples. This is where you divide by a decimal. Now you don't have a whole number dividing a decimal. Now you have a decimal dividing another decimal. So we're going to have to add another couple of steps, which is move the decimal in the divisor to make it a whole number. And if you move the decimal in the divisor, then you have to move the decimal in the dividend the same number of spaces. Okay, then you move the decimal straight up in the quotient like we did before. So the only step we're adding here is moving the decimal on the number on the outside. And if you move it on the outside, you have to do the same thing to the inside, same direction and the same amount of spaces. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, here we go. Alright, so we have the first number here is going to be 39.06. So I'm going to write down right here 39.06, and that's going to be divided by 0.0003. So my points are here. You have a 0 and a 0 and then a 3. So this is how you write it. And now you're going to have to think about it right quick, because this right here, decimal, has to move in my divisor 3 spaces to the right to make it a whole number. If I put that decimal right behind the 3, now it's a whole number 3. And that's what I want to do. But if I do that on the outside, I also have to do it on the inside. 1, 2, and 3 spaces, the same amount of spaces. So now it's sitting right here, and what I have to do now is fill in a 0 right here. Once I fill in that 0, then I can move this decimal straight up into my quotient. Okay, and now that you have moved the decimal, you can forget about it. Okay, so once you do the decimal once, you can forget all about it. The decimal doesn't exist anymore in that place because it has been moved. And we can get rid of these zeros. And we can get rid of that decimal placement right there. And we can even get rid of this decimal because remember we moved it up to the top. So really this is the division that we end up with. So in order to do this, this is going to be rather simple now. 3 goes into 3 one time. That's 3. Remainder 0. Then bring down my 9. 3 goes into 9 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. Remainder 0. Bring down my 0. And 3 goes into 0 0 times. So now I can bring down my 6. And 3 goes into 6 twice. 3 times 2 is 6. Remainder 0. And I do have to bring down the last 0 and say that 3 goes into 0 0 times. Now I don't have any remainders. I have a remainder of 0, so that's what I wanted. My division is over. So my quotient is the one above here. Okay, my quotient is 13,000. Remember, we can put a comma after every 3 numbers because here's a decimal here. So it's 13,020 is my answer to problem number 1. And now you get to do problem number 2 right here, right beside it. Okay, so make sure you do it and see if you can get the right answer. Alright, now let's talk about this last one here. It says Justice earned $29.75 in 3.5 hours. How much did she earn per hour? Okay, so here's one of the keywords that will tell you that you're talking about division. It says per hour. you want to know how much 1 hour is, and they start off telling you that it's 3.5 hours. So you end up with a whole bunch of hours at the beginning, and then they want to know how much you earn in 1 hour. So you're dividing the amount of money you got into increments of 1 hour. That's why we have division here. Okay, so in order for us to do this, we're gonna pull up another graph paper here, and we're gonna start working this problem out as well. Okay, so here we go. The first thing we're gonna have to do is copy down the problem. So here's the problem: 29. Whoops. Okay, so here's the problem: $29.75 is what she got, and we are going to divide that by 3.5 hours to find out how much money she's gonna get every 1 hour. Okay, so remember the trick. We have to be able to move the decimal over on the outside, and if you move it on the outside, you have to move it on the inside. So now the decimal is in right here, and you can move it straight up to where it belongs in your quotient. After you do that, remember, you can get rid of all those decimal movements. You can actually erase them if you need to, just like I'm doing right now. Or you can rewrite it so that you end up with something clean that looks like this, and that will not mess you up later on. Okay, so let me raise that up a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to say 35. Can 35 go into 2? No, 35 is too big. Can 35 go into 29? No, 35 is still bigger than 29. But 35 does go into 297. And I know that 35 times 10 is 350. And this 297 is close to 300. So it's probably going to be either 9 or 8 times. I don't know exactly which one. So I'm going to try both. I'm going to say 35 times 8 and see what that gives me. 8 times 5 is 40. Carry the 4. 8 times 3 is 24. Plus 4 is 28. So that's close. That's 280. And if I add another 35, I'm probably going to go over the 300 mark, because I only need 20 more to get to 300. So if I add 35, I know I'm going to go over 297. So I think 8 is going to work. 8 is going to be the number that we need. There's my 8 right there. And 8 times 35, we already worked it out, is 280. So when we subtract, 7 minus nothing is 7. 9 minus 8 is 1. And 2 minus 2 is 0. Bring down that 5. Now 35 goes into 175. I'm not sure. We're going to have to figure this out. So again, come over here to the side and say 35 times, well, I know this ends in a 5, so let's just start with a 5, because I know 5 times 5 is 25, and that ends with a 5. So there's 5 times 5 is 25, so I write down my 5, and I carry my 2. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 2 is 17. Well, I hit it right on the head. There's the 175 that I needed, so I know for sure it's going to be 5. So I'm going to put the 5 right there, and 5 times 35 gave me 175. So when I do my subtraction, I can stop because my remainder is 0. So this is my quotient, and this is how much money. $8.05. No, you have to put a 0 behind there, and that's $8.50 per hour. That's how much Justice earned at whatever she's doing. Okay, so that's the reason why we want to know how to divide decimals, because we would really need to know this for real life, every day after graduation, college, high school, middle school, any kind of things that you're doing in your real life, in your real world, is going to involve dividing some decimals. So remember, the trick here was to move that decimal from that 3.5 and the 29.75. We moved it over once to make it a whole number on the outside, and if we move it once on the outside, we gotta move it once on the inside. That's how we got that decimal up there. Okay, and then we erased it so it wouldn't mess us up in our calculations. So really, it's really simple. That's all the steps you have to do. Make sure you do the other 2 problems that I didn't do with you during these notes, and be prepared to do some more examples when you get to class. Thank you.